Welcome to the Mind Body Business Show. The 3 keys to your success is just moments away. Here's your host, Brian Kelly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mind Body Business Show. We have a phenomenal show lined up for you tonight, not because of me, but because of our special guest expert. This man has seen and done nearly everything when it comes to the entrepreneurial world, and I cannot wait to tap into his big, beautiful brain and for him to give the value to you that you came on to watch, that you so richly deserve. Thanks for tuning in, for joining us tonight. And by the way, continue to comment, ask questions. We love interaction and feedback. Let's get to it, shall we? The Mind Body Business Show. What is that all about? Real briefly, in my 55 years on this planet, I started studying only those people that I deemed successful, that looked successful to me, that seemed successful, and that were in other people's eyes. And I started studying them and finding out what is it that made them successful. And it came down to 3 things. There were 3 primary areas, and I've now called them the 3 pillars of success. And you might have guessed it, what those are by now, and that is the mind, body, and business. So mind being mindset. That is each and every person that I studied that is successful. These are people I've met at seminars that I knew personally or that I read in books and followed online. They each had mastered their own mindset, and they have achieved a way of creating a unstoppable and very flexible mindset. That is one that you need to have to succeed as an entrepreneur, because let's face it, being an entrepreneur is not that easy. It is not that easy. You need a thick skin, so to speak, to succeed. And then we'll move into body. Speaking of skin, that's not just about your physical body. It does include that. It's about working out, exercising on a regular basis, and putting good nutrition into your body. And I like to say the mind and body are a team. And more importantly, they are your team. And if any member of any team is not operating at what I like to call a peak level of performance, then the team as a whole suffers, doesn't it? And so the mind and body, so take care of both and really look into mastering both of those. And then there's business. Business is a multifaceted arena. It includes things like sales, marketing, team building, scaling, systematizing. It goes on and on. And every one of these people that I studied had mastered these areas of success. Now, here's the good news, is they personally did not master every single area that there is in business, every skill set. There are so many. The thing they did, they got smart and they delegated to those who had the skill sets so that they wouldn't have to go and learn every single one of them. And so there's good news. You can leverage your talents with other people to help you to build a successful business. And another wonderful trait, a very wonderful trait that most of these incredible, successful individuals had was they all were very voracious readers of books. And to that end, I'd like to segue real quick into a segment I affectionately call Bookmarks.
Bookmarks. Born to read. Bookmarks. Ready, steady, read. Bookmarks. Brought to you by reachyourpeaklibrary.com.
Yes, there you see it on the side of the screen here to me, reachyourpeaklibrary.com. And real quickly, for those of you watching and listening, everyone that's paying attention here is to do just that, is pay attention to the show here and just take notes. Take out an old-fashioned piece of paper and a pen and jot down notes, because between our guest expert, who is an amazing gentleman, Paul Moore, and myself, we'll be giving you a lot of resources that you'll be able to tap into. Write those down instead of that, instead of going off and checking them out online while you're watching the show and listening to it in the background. Try to avoid that temptation and stay with us on the show, because I like to say the magic happens in the room. And I'd really hate it for you to miss something that could have been the most important tidbit of value that Paul gives you tonight that could literally change your life forever. So stay on the show, stay with us, engage, comment, like, love, and let's have a good time. reachyourpeaklibrary.com. What is that? Real quickly, real briefly, that is a website I put together, and I kid you not, with you in mind, with the entrepreneur, with the business person that's trying to achieve greater success than they are now. I'm going to reveal something here. I didn't used to read voraciously until about 10 years ago. I have not been a voracious reader for very long. And once I started, though, I will say it did change my life in profound ways. And I began reading everything I can get my hands onto. I love to listen to books on Audible. I found that was my mode of ingesting information that was better than reading with my eyeballs that would get tired if I had a book. And that's why I didn't read a lot, because it made me tired. And I found this other means to do it, to ingest the information. And so if you're reading books and you want a good list of personally vetted books that I personally vet, another list to go to, I'm always looking for new reads myself. At least the odds are you won't be wasting your time, because this has been vetted by at least one other successful person, and you can have a better probability of this really having a positive impact on you. Every book I've ever read is not in here, by the way. That is why I made that comment. And so, speaking of success, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I think it's time we bring on our special guest expert. Let's get right to it.
It's time for the Guest Expert Spotlight. Savvy, skillful, professional, adept, trained, big league, qualified.
And there he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mr. Paul Moore. Hey, Paul, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Brian. How are you?
Oh, I could not be better. I'm so excited for this show. I'm looking into your bio. I've done some research about you. You're an amazing man who has accomplished much, learned a ton, and I know that our viewers are just going to love listening to what you have to say going forward. I cannot wait. Before we jump in, though, real quick, if I may, I wanted to remind everyone who's watching live, for those of you that stay on live to the very end, you will have the opportunity to win a 5-night stay at a 5-star luxury resort in Mexico, compliments of powertexting.com. You see their name on the screen. They have put this thing together where we can give away, and have been giving away, a vacation every single show, once a week, every single show. And it is not one of those things where they lure you into a timeshare meeting, you know the type. It's nothing like that. And I know that for a fact, because the founder of powertexting.com himself has utilized this very resource 3 times. And he said every single time that the experience was phenomenal. All right, let's get to it. Let's bring on this amazing gentleman. After graduating with an engineering degree and then an MBA from Ohio State, Paul started on the management development track at Ford Motor Company in Detroit. After 5 years, he departed to start a staffing company with a partner. They sold it to a publicly traded firm for $2.9 million just 5 years later. Along the way, Paul was finalist for Ernst & Young's Michigan Entrepreneur of the Year 2 years straight. Paul later entered the real estate sector, where he has completed 85 real estate investments and exits, appeared on an HGTV Special, I love them, by the way, rehabbed and managed dozens of rental properties, developed a waterfront subdivision, and started 2 successful online real estate marketing firms. I'm not done yet. Whew. 3 successful developments, including assisting with development of a Hyatt hotel and a multifamily housing project that led him into the multifamily investment arena. Paul co-hosts a wealth building podcast called How to Lose Money and is a frequent contributor to BiggerPockets. Paul is the author of The Perfect Investment, Create Enduring Wealth from the Historic Shift to Multifamily Housing, and has a forthcoming book on self-storage investing, which we are going to go into tonight, I hope. Paul is also the managing director of 2 commercial real estate funds at Wellings Capital. I'm exhausted. That's amazing. You're amazing,
I'm exhausted.
Paul. Welcome to the show, my friend. Officially.
Hey, thanks, Brian. This is great.
Woo-wee. That is a powerful, powerful bio, brother. I love that. When I first read that, and we're talking months ago when we were working out getting you on the show, I was like, wow, this is going to be an all-star player on the show. I could not wait for this evening. I'm so glad it's here. Oh, my. And so the bio, you know, I love those because everyone gets to get a sense of you and what you've achieved and accomplished, your experience over the past number of years. And what I like to do is then kind of switch gears and then dig a little deeper. And this is nothing horrible or bad. It's really good. I like to dig into the mind because as I opened the show, the mind is one of the 3 pillars of success, hence the name being part of the name of the show. And what I wanted to find out from you, Paul, specifically, being an entrepreneur is difficult and it's tough enough as it is. And you have to have a rock solid, positive mindset. We're human. We have those times, but you have to find a way to rise above it all continually, consistently. And so for you, Paul, when it comes to maintaining something like that positive, productive, and successful mindset, what do you do on a regular basis to sustain that?
Yeah, one thing I've been doing for about 34 years now is doing like a time of morning meditation. I get up, and no matter how busy I am, I mean, except in those rare exceptions, no matter how busy, no matter how much I have on my plate, I try to get, about 45 minutes to an hour to, just sit, meditate, pray. I try to write journals. I actually am working on a devotional book that I'm writing. And so that's been part of that journey, just writing out those devotionals, which have been really fun for me personally. And, I do some positive affirmations, things like that, just kind of restate my goals, not only for the day, but my mindset, our big picture goals for the year and for longer than a year. So I try to do that every morning. And I find if I don't do it 2 or 3 days in a row, I can feel it.
That is amazing because what happens with many of our past guests, it's very similar. And what happens, I've noticed, is everyone who's achieved a level of success similar to yours or you're way up there, is they all seem to have a routine, a disciplined routine that they follow on a regular basis. And it's interesting you said that if you don't follow it for several days, you feel it. And I can so relate to that because, and the opposite is true. When you get back into it, you start noticing the ramping up of everything. Yeah. You start to become more successful. Everything just falls in alignment much better, much easier. And I really resonate with that. So for all of you watching and listening, take notes on that is routine and discipline in following that routine. And it's a good kind of discipline, not the bad kind of discipline that some of us in the past have gone to on previous shows. It's interesting how people react to the words we use. Yeah. Also talked a little bit about the importance of reading when it comes to becoming successful, because think about it. What less costly way is there to learn from someone who has achieved a great level of success? I mean, you buy a book and you read it, you have it forever. You can go back to it time and again. And many of like the books I put on Reach Your Peak Library, they are just invaluable to me. And I've got bookmarks throughout them. So for you, Paul, I'd love to hear what business related book, if you could just pick just one, it could be recent, it could be in the past. What business related book has inspired you the most so far?
Yeah, Brian, for years, I considered myself a serial entrepreneur. I was even thinking about putting that on my business card at one time. I've got a stack of business cards from different businesses that some succeeded, many failed. And I actually regret that. I regret being a shiny object chaser. Some of the most successful people in the world figured out one thing they wanted to do when they were really young, and they stuck to that one thing, and they said no to 1,000, maybe 10,000 distractions. A friend of mine and business partner just ran for governor of Colorado last time around, and he said he rubbed shoulders with billionaires, and he said, they're not that much smarter. They don't have a better education. But what they do have is most of them picked something in their late teens or early 20s, and they stuck with that one thing. And that's the name of the book. I'm sure you have it in your library. It's Gary Papasan and Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. It's called The One Thing. And it teaches us to focus on one thing for this hour, this day, this week, but also for the long term. Over the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years. And so that book, if I would have had that and applied it in my early 20s, I think I would have been probably far more successful, especially if I would have discovered what I'm doing now magically in my 20s. But at any rate, that's the book I'd recommend for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. That is amazing. I've wrote it down. I am getting that. I will have that in my library before I turn in for the evening. I kid you not. That is how I act. I do not have that in my library currently. So thank you for that book resource. And so it's The One Thing. And what were the authors again?
It's Gary Keller, who's the founder of Keller Williams, and Jay Papasan, his co-author on a number of books.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. So look, for those of you watching and listening, I'm taking notes. So I think it'd be a good idea if you did the same. This is an amazing, amazing show not because of me or what we've done here. It's because of people like Paul who come onto the show and bring incredible value. It's just amazing. I get the blessing of talking with and interacting with each of you. And Paul, you're already amazing and bringing the value. And I'm so appreciative because people are going to be blessed. Those that are not watching live that get to listen to this or watch it afterward are just going to be glad they did. That's what I will say with that. Well, and so thanks. You've been all over the place with your entrepreneurialism. You serial entrepreneur, self-professed. What actually ignited you to spark? What ignited the spark in you to go down where you are going down now? To start the latest business venture you're working on now?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple things. The first one was I discovered something about 4 years ago that most people know about now, but a lot of people didn't historically. And that is the great evil that is happening in the world and in America right now. It's called human trafficking. Brian, do you know that if you took, not the average, the record profits of Apple, General Motors, Nike, and Starbucks, combine that together, doubled that number, Brian, the record profits of all four doubled. That's the approximate annual revenues generated by human trafficking every year.
Wow.
It's incredible. It's happening under our noses. And you know what? I'd like to believe that if I was alive in the mid-1800s, I'd be an abolitionist fighting against slavery. And I'd like to believe if I was an adult in the 1950s and 60s, I would have been fighting for civil rights. Well, this is a civil right. It is slavery, and it's happening right under our noses. So I am trying to dedicate myself to getting that message out and to try to fund, I'm trying to fund, like, over my lifetime through my efforts and people I can corral together with me, $1 billion to fight human trafficking and rescue its victims. And so that's my big why. And that's one of the reasons I keep going. Now, vocationally, I discovered something called the magic and the power of commercial real estate. You know, the Forbes 400, the wealthiest people in the world, almost all invest in commercial real estate. And I did not know why that was true. But after I discovered the power of it, I realized why. You know, if you have a residential home and you're Chip and Joanna Gaines Jr. from, I guess they're on HGTV, I think they are, and you were able to flip that house, and let's say you could take a $300,000 house and you could do every imaginable upgrade to it, and you spent $500,000, you got it up to $800,000. You probably wouldn't get $800,000 out of it if you were in a neighborhood of $350,000 homes. We all know that because these homes are valued, or the value is based on comps or comparable properties. The value formula in commercial real estate is entirely different, Brian. There's a formula, and its value equals the income divided by the rate of return, which is similar to a PE ratio in stocks. Another way of saying it is it's the value equals the net operating income, not including the debt or the debt service, the net operating income divided by the capitalization rate or the cap rate, which is the rate of return. So if you can increase the numerator of that equation, or if you can somehow compress or lower the denominator, you can dramatically impact the value of that asset. Now, when you add safe leverage to it, when you add some debt, you can increase or accelerate the growth in the equity even more. And so that is the power of commercial real estate. And I wanted to see that become accessible to the average investor. For years, people thought this is only the playground of the really wealthy, the institutional investors, the life insurance companies, pension funds, REITs, etc. But now, because of the change in some of the tax laws, especially from 2012, that is accessible to everybody. So our company, Wellings Capital, provides an on-ramp or a front door, if you will, for people who want to get involved in commercial real estate, but they're not sure who to trust or where to start. We make it accessible for them to get into investments like this. We have a fund. Right now, we have 39 assets in one of our funds. So somebody can invest, for example, $50,000, and that be spread across these 39 commercial assets. Now, these are mom and pop facilities, self-storage, mobile home parks, some multifamily that have a lot of upside because they weren't upgraded. They weren't maximized. The NOI, the net operating income, was not driven to its optimal point by the previous mom and pop owner. They were probably, a little older and wanted to get out, retire. And there's easy things that can be done to significantly impact that value. And so very, very excited to be part of this. If I would have known in my 20s, about commercial real estate, I would never have done anything else. Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring all this up. It seems somewhat parallel to me as far as real estate. It's, one of those things that's never really been much on my radar until a friend of mine who is in real estate and has made a fortune in it started developing courses to make it open and available to people like me as well. And so it's got me very intrigued listening to you that, you make this basically Wellings Capital, the front door. I love how you describe that to people to have a way to enter into this market and understand and be able to find someone they can trust and utilize your services to help in getting them into the real estate market, the commercial real estate market, and also successfully investing there. So I'm really interested in that. And so along those lines, so to get those people to your front door, this is one of the most curious questions I have for all of my guests. I love to find out what different business owners are doing to get those people to your front door, so to speak, whether it's virtual or physically. What is it for you and your company, Paul? How do you go about marketing your business? I truly, and I guess let's just say marketing is so multifaceted. Let's dial it down. What has been your most successful form of marketing thus far?
Well, first, let me tell you my philosophy on this. So about 3.5 years ago, I have been doing real estate investments since 2000. I had some friends and family who had invested with me since about 2004. And we had that small group of investors. They had always made money. At least they never lost money on any deals. And so I was really excited to have them come along. But that was only like 4 people. And I needed hundreds of people to invest with us to make our business successful. So the first thing I did as I started chasing the silver bullet, I started thinking, well, I've got this friend in China who works among the uber wealthy in Shanghai. I'm sure he would like to help them invest in the US. And so for about a year, I was counting on this friend to bring us these uber wealthy investors. And when we had a couple deals, and I called him. First time it was Chinese New Year. Sorry, I need 6 weeks to get back to you. The second time, well, that deal's too small. We really want to invest in, bigger deals. So I just realized I couldn't count on this. And my mentor one day, speaking of a great reader, he sent me like 10 books. But one day on the phone, and this was actually on a phone call with other people from my company on there, a conference call, he said, listen, Paul, I've been telling you for 2 years what you need to do to go out and cultivate an investment strategy, and you haven't done it. Don't call me again until you've done what I said. And it hurt. And you know what, Brian? That is exactly what I needed to hear. Well, about a week later, I discovered this little purple podcast app on my iPhone. I'd never seen it. It had been there for years, but I didn't know what it was. You know how those things are. And someone said, you can listen to podcasts on here. This was only like 3.5 years ago. And I said, okay, so I'll try one out. So I stumbled around while my wife was in a department store one day, and I stumbled into this podcast. I turned it on, and this is what I heard. The guy told a story. He said, if you're looking for investors are really sensitive to being sold. They don't like to be chased. They don't like to be pushed. They will run away if you look desperate or if you're putting any pressure on them. So don't do that. Then he told this story, and I hope I can leave your listeners with this. He said, if you're up north and you want to live on salmon, let's say you're up in the Pacific Northwest and you're all alone out in the wilderness, and you want to live on salmon, you can become a spear fisherman. He said you'll have to learn to whittle the limbs. You'll have to learn to carve them. You'll have to learn to throw these spears. You'll have to hope that a salmon swims by in the dark stream right when you are poised and ready. You'll have to hope that they don't dodge your spear. You can possibly get it to shore, and you might be able to eat some salmon. That's how spear fishermen live. He said, or you can do this. And this is where the analogy becomes silly, Brian. But he said, you can be a grizzly bear standing in the waterfall with your jaw unhinged and waiting for the salmon to jump into your mouth. And he said, that is the way to find investors. And I stopped the audio. I replayed that story like 4 times. And my wife came back to the car and I was so excited. I said, I found the key. I found the key. This is it. And she thought I was a little nuts. But basically the story meant that, we need to become content or subject matter experts and let people call us and ask to invest. So I was already working on it. I wrote a book on multifamily investing and I published it. Then I started a podcast. We have a wealth building podcast called How to Lose Money. And we also, I became a guest on about 130 other podcasts over these 3 years. I actually started writing on a blog for BiggerPockets, which has 1.6 million members. It's the largest real estate blog out there. I started providing video content, started speaking occasionally live, wrote another book. And all these things I've done have caused people to come to me. They've come to me. They ask to invest. I have people who contact us every day, sometimes several a day, who say, hey, I'm interested in investing with your company. How do I learn more? And so now we have hundreds of investors and it's working great. So that's how we do it. That's how we market to investors at Wellings Capital.
Goodness sakes. That's an amazing story. I love the bear story. That's very cool. And
Yeah.
so true. So many, it's interesting. We were talking before the show and, I'm putting together a very, very comprehensive training course. It's going to be online. And the thing I've seen, and I've been guilty of myself, is you work so hard to put it together. Then when you're done putting it together, you think you're done. It's like, that can't be farther from the truth. Now is the time to really turn up the effort and the heat in marketing it instead of standing there like a bear waiting for that fish to jump in your mouth. You need to go out and throw the spear and target and work. And so I used that analogy recently, and it's very telling. I mean, a lot of people think that you just build it and they will come, like the old movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I appreciate that.
Right. Yeah, it's really true. With investors, it's quite different than chasing people for a marketing program or whatever. Now, I've got another company, and we generate leads for real estate agents. On that one, we have to throw the spear all the time. But with this company, we are the bear in the waterfall waiting for investors to come to us.
Phenomenal. I love it. We have some people chiming in saying hello. Thanks, Amanda, for coming on. Adam Wins is typing in there. He's like, yeah, it's okay. You can stop now. You've created your product. Just chill out. And that's with the smiley face. And then Genius probably talking about you. No doubt. This is amazing. Appreciate all of you coming in, chiming in, and actually just having fun with us, because we are here to have fun, but we want to give you the greatest value we possibly can. And it's coming by way of this gentleman right here, Mr. Paul Moore. He is just an amazing gentleman. And I appreciate you once again so much for spending the time. You're on the East Coast in Virginia, if I recall. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And so it's kind of late there right now. It's 9 p.m. And this man is sticking it out, and he's very alert and just bringing it. And I appreciate that. And, you know, you talked about being a serial entrepreneur, and then you kind of collected yourself and decided, I'm just going to focus on one thing, find that one thing I'm passionate about, and just go everything at that. How has being an entrepreneur affected your family life over the years?
Yeah, so we homeschooled 4 of our kids, and all 4, and it was great for me to be home. It was great for me to have an office out of my home. It was great for me to be able to be here, to take my kids to school, to take my son hunting, fishing, etc. But it also was very challenging because I didn't learn for years when to turn the work switch off. So, I mean, I might be at dinner getting texts and calls, and honey, I've got to get this one. It's this one important call. And I've even got a call with an investor tonight after this. And so it's, they are in China, by the way. So that's one of the reasons. But at any rate, it's been really, really hard, honestly, because, they say there's a joke out there that says, being an entrepreneur is great. We have the freedom to work any 80 hours a week we want. And, that's been true for me. I don't know that it's been 80 all the time, but it has been challenging for me to draw that line between work and home. And so I've actually signed up for 3 coaching programs over the years. I've spent a lot of money on coaching. I really believe in that. And the newest one I'm in is actually one of their core principles is to teach entrepreneurs to take time off and draw that line of separation. And my wife is so happy that I'm going to be signing up for this program. But at any rate, so it's been great. I'd say it's been a blessing and a challenge.
I love that. And learn when to turn the work switch off. I couldn't have said that better. I went through a phase in my life. This is going back probably 2 decades ago, but I did that same thing where I could not figure out how to turn that dang thing off. Yeah. And I would be up working till very late. My wife would call up and say, dinner's ready. I've got 2 young kids at the time. And I'll say, yeah, I'll be down in a minute. And a minute became 2 hours. Yeah. And then I come downstairs to a rightfully so not happy wife and kids. Kids are probably in bed by then, and were many times, and just kept doing this over and over. And finally, thankfully, she communicated to me that we had an issue. And thankfully this happened. And, it hurt because I was in the wrong, though. There was no doubt. And I'm so glad that she brought that to my attention. So we are still happily married to this day, many years later, over 30 years now. And it's been an amazing ride. But you're so right. It takes discipline in that regard on when to shut things down. Right. And if you can get into that routine that you were talking about before, and I'm not talking about you doing this, it's for the people listening, make that part of your routine and make rules in your own life, because when you work for someone else, they make the rules for you. They tell you get off work at 5 or whenever it is, and you shut down. Right. Corporate employees, they shut down. They go out and have fun. They go have dinner. They do whatever. They do chores. But for entrepreneurs, it's often we get snowballed in our own activities, and it can definitely run away. And it still does on occasion, but certainly not habitually anymore. So I can still relate with that, Paul. That was right down our alley, man. And so you've done a lot of businesses. You've got a lot of experience in a wide, diverse number of areas of business. And from all of the experience of those, what have you found to be the most successful way of building a customer base, one that sticks with you, that you can nurture and keep coming back to time and again?
Yeah, one thing we've done is really try to create a lot of content, try to create a lot of value by enriching our customers' lives, by telling them resources other than just investing with us. I was talking to a guy today, a doctor in Boston, And I said, he was talking about investing quite a lot with us. And I said, you haven't invested with us before. Maybe you should consider investing a smaller amount and spreading that out to other operators, other investment funds that I could recommend or you could find on your own. And I think people appreciate that because I'm just offering value. I do a lot of, like I said, a lot of blogs, a lot of free videos. I do conference calls with investors or even people just seeking advice every Wednesday. And so I do things like that. And by creating that value, hopefully we become somebody our customers trust and will return back to in the future.
I can so appreciate that on so many levels, Paul, coming from someone like you that has achieved a great level of success, because I've also run into so many others who are the opposite, where they're not there to create value, but they're in there for the quick kill and at all costs, really, at their business costs. And they don't realize it in the beginning, that short-term kill, so to speak, that gets them that jolt of income. And they say, that's good, I'm going to keep doing that. But then they don't nurture their customers, their base, their clients, or their team and train them. They're spending all their time for those quote unquote quick kills. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that happen several times in the past to people I known. And I watch in front of my eyes how it crumbles. And I've had them call me, Brian, I don't understand. Everybody is asking me to help them now, but I don't have time because I'm out there, crushing it with these closing of the sales. I said, you got to put a pause button out there, buddy, and you got to start nurturing those people or you're going to lose it all. And Guess what happened? It, eventually it all withered away. And so a lot of people are now shifting over to the concept you just mentioned, Paul, and that's providing value. This show is my way of providing value. I don't charge a dime for it. It doesn't cost my guests to come on and appear, and vice versa. I don't pay guests to come on. It's here for free information because it's near and dear to my heart to get knowledge to the people who desperately want it, who are hungry for it. And if they're hungry for it, they will listen to it. And I love a couple of things you said in the past, just a little bit ago, coaching. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, look at this gentleman. He's super successful and he is hiring coaches. I mean, what kind of lesson does that provide to everyone watching and listening? It's a successful lesson is what it is. And the most successful people on the planet, one that is a go-to, an obvious go-to is Michael Jordan in basketball. One of the most successful players, maybe the greatest of all time. That's debatable by many, but he was on the top of his game and he didn't do it alone. He had many coaches that he paid for, not just the coach of his team, but he had athletic trainers. He had extra coaches going on the side. Tiger Woods, the same thing. Mm-hmm. Every successful person that I can't name one successful person of that did it 100% solo with nobody helping or coaching or mentoring. I don't see if you could. And so for those watching and listening, invest in yourself, put money into it, pay for a, very commendable, successful coach. If you want to learn how to make money in real estate and commercial real estate, you're looking at the guy right here next to me. Reach out to him, get involved with his company and pick his brain to become successful in the real estate market. Whatever you need, there's a coach or mentor out there willing to teach you. Are you willing to be taught? That's the bottom line. And many aren't, honestly, because of that big E word, ego. I can do it all myself. I used to be the same. I think everybody has been down that path at one point or another. Now, as an entrepreneur, one of the things I've learned is to be okay with not being perfect, to be okay with things not going the way you plan, because it never seems to, and it more often than not goes the way you don't expect it nor want it. So along those lines, and the cool thing is, though, successful people like yourself use those times to learn, those events to learn from. What would you say is one of the biggest learning, I don't like to call them mistakes, but I'll just call it mistake right now. What are some of the biggest mistakes you've possibly made in the back, behind where you are now? And what have you done to react to those and rise above them?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake I made was after I was, 33 years old. I had sold my company for almost $3 million. I had that money. I started a nonprofit organization at that point. And I thought, I'm a full-time investor now. Well, the truth was, Brian, I was a full-time speculator now, is what I was. The difference between investing and speculating is really critical. I thought I was an investor. Now, investing is when your principal is generally safe and you've got a chance to make a return. Speculating is when your principal is not at all safe and you've got a chance to make a return. And the difference is quite important. Now, investing, unfortunately, for entrepreneurs, we're a really optimistic bunch. We are excited about things. We think of best case scenario. And when we go after something, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The problem is when we invest that way, we often swing for the fences. Now, some of the wealthiest, most famous entrepreneurs in history swung for the fences and they hit it out of the park. Jeff Bezos with Amazon, we've got, people like Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, etc. They hit it out of the park, but those people, now Buffett shouldn't have been in that list. I was wrong for putting him in there, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But those people that hit it out of the park are the exceptions. They're legendary because they're generally 1 in a million or better. And so we can't generally replicate that kind of thing. Elon Musk's struggles have been an example of not being able to replicate necessarily the great success you had one time. The problem is when we do that as entrepreneurs, we might hit it out of the park once, like I did in the early to mid 90s, and then try to invest money that way. When we invest that way, trying to swing it for the fences, trying to do something exciting, we can often really mess up. Paul Samuelson was the first Nobel Prize winner from the US in economics. And Paul said, investing should be more like watching paint dry or watching grass grow. If you want excitement, take $800 and go to Las Vegas. So, Brian, I was speculating and I made a lot of money on some deals and I lost a lot of money on a lot of deals. And so I found that the money I had from selling that company was largely evaporated over a number of years. And I had to rebuild. Robert Kiyosaki said, if you make $1 million by the time you're 30 and blow it all by the time you're 40, what do you have at that point? The opportunity to start over again. And that's what I had to do a number of times. And that's why I don't like being a shiny object chasing serial entrepreneur. Now, when I learned to invest, I viewed it more in a baseball analogy. Instead of swinging for the fences, Brian, I viewed it more as trying to hit singles and doubles, which is what our company is trying to do now. And sometimes you do better. Sometimes you get a triple or better, but not swinging for the fences has been a really important change in strategy. And it's really, really worked well.
Yeah, and boy, I can relate to everything you just said. So many of us watch and see these people have astronomical success that hit it out of the ballpark the first time and then expect that we should be able to do the same. And that, I think, is what crushes so many dreams because it's so far from reality. The odds are astronomically against. And I love the analogy with baseball where, now it's about getting the hits and doubles because those turn into runs and runs will get you to a winning game. And that is great advice. So for anyone out there, I mean, it takes time, it takes diligence, it takes perseverance, and you just have to be in it for the long haul. And you touched on it earlier, Paul, that a big part of the reason that you have stuck it out is because you had a very, very compelling why to go about and, to keep this going. So if you don't have that powerful why, those you watching or listening, what is something that you would go crawl over broken glass for a mile for? Is it somebody or something, a cause that no matter what happens during this wonderful journey down entrepreneurship lane, when you're going through the good times and then the tough times hit, who or what is that reason you will never, ever quit, no matter what? And if you don't have that, it can be a very difficult thing to actually stay the course until the end and reach the finish line. And
Right.
So, Paul, you're just, my gosh, the nuggets of wisdom are just flying left and right and amazing. And I can't wait to get to more questions with you, because there's one at the end I cannot wait, especially because it is very compelling, and I don't want to talk it up too much just at the moment. But so we talked about things that that you look back and you could have done differently, but you've gotten past it, obviously. And those were, I coined as mistakes, even though they're just learning situations. On the other side, you know, being an entrepreneur, there are many things that are kind of set aside for us to get to that level of success, because let's face it, it takes, like you said, sometimes up to 80 hours a week to get this done. What kind of sacrifices have you had to make that come to mind to become a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, you know, I was on the BiggerPockets podcast last year, and they asked me, what are your hobbies? And I kind of froze like a deer in the headlights, because I guess that would be my biggest sacrifice, if you want to call it that. At one point, I actually told somebody my favorite hobby was work. And that's probably a bad idea. But anyway, I think that's been the biggest sacrifice. The second one is, like I said before, I've had a really hard time switching off in the evenings, in the weekends. And I think those have been the biggest sacrifices I've made. I mean, I don't watch TV, which I'm fine with, but I don't have time to read pleasure books. I mean, I read books for business all the time, but I don't have time for novels and sitting by the pool and all that kind of stuff. And I'm okay with that. But I guess you could say that those were sacrifices as well. I always wanted to learn to windsurf, and I have done it, but I haven't ever gotten good at it because I haven't taken the time. So there you go.
And another one I can totally relate with, because for me, and it sounds like it is for you, work isn't work. I enjoy it.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And so an interesting thing occurred just recently. My wife and I went on I don't remember, 10 or 11 day cruise on the East Coast. And it was a beautiful, wonderful time, East Coast of the United States. And I remember around day 7 or 8, I was getting stir crazy. I brought my laptop, but there was no wireless access. I didn't intend to do anything on it. It was just there in case something came up. And I started going stir crazy around day 7 or so. And I caught myself really, really desiring to be back in the office and be at it, because that's what I wanted to be doing, not because I had to. I wanted to. It was pulling me. And so, like you say, if you want to call it that, a sacrifice, I love how you did that, because, you know, my hobby includes what I do. Yeah. I mean, it's okay. I think it's okay. It's just, like you said, the importance of knowing when to shut it off and be with those who we love the most and spend time with. That's really where it comes down to, you know, the differentiator. You know, if you're going to just be crazy and work till 2 a.m. and never see your spouse or your kids or anything, that could come at a big sacrifice in its own right.
Right.
So if you were actually on the other side and you were sitting in my chair and you were able to ask a question of yourself, what would that be? And then how would you respond to that question?
I would ask myself, what was your worst deal ever? And what was your best deal ever? Ooh. And so, surprisingly, those are often, I mean, those actually are the same deal. How could that be? Well, here's how it could be. In 2004 to 2008, I was buying up waterfront lots, and it was somewhat speculative because nobody needs a lot. You know, I consider true wealth. This is a little diversion from my answer. True wealth is assets that produce income. And so that's why things like Bitcoin and things like that, no offense to anybody who invested in it, it's really truly speculative, though, because there's no way to tag the value of it. There's no way to put a value on Bitcoin. It's completely subjective. Well, buying lots at Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia for, say, $200,000 and $300,000 each, and then cleaning them up, getting a dock permit, beautifying them, subdividing them, and selling them for a large profit is also somewhat speculative. I mean, there is the value of the land itself that's underlying, but nobody needs to buy a lot. And so I was speculating, buying these lots, increasing the value and then selling them. We had a bunch of them in late 2007. It was exactly 10 years to the month after I put about $1.5 million in my bank account from selling our company. And I now had $2.5 million in debt. And that was no fun. And my partner approached me in late 2007 and he said, I can't do this anymore. I can't make half of these interest payments. I'm out of here. And he signed over all the lots to me, including all the debt, and said, see you later. We're still good friends, by the way, but it wasn't a fun time. And so I was trying to figure out what to do, Brian. This was clearly the one lot in particular. I think I had $860,000 in debt on, and that was a 5-acre waterfront lot that if I would have subdivided, I would have been able to sell the 5 lots for an average of $300,000 to $400,000 each when times were good. And the problem is, the speculation was, there was supposed to be a county road there, a private road in front of this lot that was going to be turned into a publicly maintained road, and that would allow me to subdivide this into 5 lots. Well, the public maintained road, state maintained road never happened. And so I was stuck with these 5 5-acre lot. That was my worst deal, I guess you could say. Well, in late 2007, of course, if you can remember, Brian, what that was like, we assumed that the downturn was over. There was all this bad stuff, all this shaking, quaking in the economy. Housing sales had slowed down to a crawl. And we were hoping, at least, that the worst was over, not knowing that we were about to go over the edge in 2008, a year later, into the worst slowdown since the Great the Great Depression. See, it's so common now. I think that's the big one. But anyway, so I called a few friends together and they said, hey, what are you going to do? You're going to declare bankruptcy? I said, no. I said, I was meditating this morning and I said, I came up with this idea. What would George Mueller do? Now, George Mueller was this crazy hellion in Germany in the early 1800s, and he turned into sort of a saint. He moved to England and he actually housed over 10,000 orphans in his lifetime. And Brian, he did all this without ever asking anybody for a dime or even letting anybody know that he needed a dime. He actually raised what we believe to be on the order of $300 to $500 million in today's dollars, all without asking anybody. And he had all these really strong opinions, as you can imagine. And one was that you shouldn't have any debt. Well, I was already in trouble because I had $2.5 million in debt. But I thought, if he found himself in debt, what would he do? And so I told my friends who were asking if I was going to declare bankruptcy, I said, I'm going to give my way out of debt. And that went over really well. And they thought I was a little crazy. And I went home and told my wife and kids, hey, we're going to give our way out of debt. I said, actually, our back's up against the wall. We may lose it all. We're going to lose it all anyway. So let's start giving generously and see what happens. So first week in January 2008, we wrote a large check to a nonprofit we cared about. Second week in January, third week, fourth week in January, did the same thing. And about that 4th week, I actually ran into a real estate developer in a restaurant, and he said, hey, have you thought about this to solve your problem? He named a certain law, and I said, yeah, I know all about that law. That won't work to solve my problem. He said, well, you ought to think about it. And boom, it was like this light bulb went off. And I had this like sort of epiphany on how I could actually subdivide this lot. I could see it in my mind. And so rather than try to do it kind of on the QT, I actually went to the county planning and zoning board the next day and said, hey, here's my plan. I know it's kind of crazy. I have my surveyor with me who's a longtime veteran with this county zoning board, and he had his head in his hands like, oh, he was so embarrassed to be there with me because I gave him this crazy outlandish idea, and the lady told me so. She said, that's outlandish. I've been working here for decades. No one's ever come up with such an end run on our law. And she said, but you're right. She said, "You found a loophole in the law that nobody has ever found. You can do this." And so I did it. And Brian, it was a lot of work, a lot of meetings with lawyers and banks and surveyors and soil engineers. But 13 months later, in the middle of the Great Recession, I was 100% debt free. And I even paid off my house.
Wow. All from giving. I love it.
I think so. I don't know. It just seems like there must have been a connection,
I have no problem in believing that was a major reason for it. That's phenomenal. Phenomenal. I love it. I love it. Well, we are coming down to the wire here, my friend. And there is one looming question that I still wanted to bring up. And it's a very intriguing question because of the type of responses I get. And I ask this question of every single entrepreneur and guest I've had on the show. I've asked this same question, and just the answers have been amazing. Before we jump into that, real quick, I want to remind everyone that they can win a 5-night stay at a 5-star luxury resort in Mexico. And to do that, to enter to win, just follow what you see on the screen right now. And that is, take out your cell phone. That's right. You have our permission to actually be a little distracted and type in the phone number 661-535-1624. And then in the message area, type in the word peak, that's PEAK, and send that, and we will receive that and choose a winner. You will be notified back via text. And this is all powered by powertexting.com, as well as sponsored by. They are the ones providing this magnificent 5-night vacation stay. So go ahead, text that right now to 661-535-1624 and enter the word peak. Send that out, PEAK, and we will choose a winner and notify you back via text. And I hope each and every one of you has the opportunity to win. Well, you all have the opportunity to win. I hope you all win. Only one winner, though. Anyway, love it, love it, love it. So, Mr. Paul Moore, this question, and just to kind of ease any potential nerves or anything, which I doubt you have them because you're a pro. You've been doing this for a long time. But the thing is, the question, there is no such thing as a wrong answer. That's one thing I want you to know. Yeah. And in fact, it's exactly the opposite. The only correct answer is yours, because this question is personal. And I don't mean in a deeply digging manner. It's just, it means something different to each and every person. And when I say that, to date, there are not two past guest experts that have answered it the same exact way. And I know it's going to happen sooner or later, because there can only be so many variants of the answer. So that can give you an idea that, whatever comes to your head is the right answer, because it's yours.
All right.
So, Mr. Paul Moore, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Here we go. Paul Moore, how do you define success?
Wow. That's a tough question. I think that it's different for everybody. And I just had a friend on a little doggy downer note here. I had a good friend who passed away yesterday, completely out of the blue. He was at work. He dropped over, and he lost his life. His daughter and 2 sons and his wife lost their father and husband of 30 plus years. And, I was thinking about, what if that was me? Have I been successful? Have I done something, in my life that was successful? And, I don't want to be so ethereal to say it's not money. It's not providing a great income for my family. It's not building wealth for me and for my clients. I don't want to say any of that. But I think the most important things we can do is to fulfill the calling that we have in this world. I talked to you about shiny object syndrome. I talked to you about chasing all these shiny objects and serial entrepreneurism. I think each one of us were built and made a certain way to accomplish a certain thing. And a lot of us don't find that till we come to a place of what I call convergence. Now, convergence is when you look back on your life, often in your 50s or sometimes 60s, occasionally in your 40s, and you can say, okay, where's my education? What am I really good at? What are my skills? What am I weak at? What have I messed up at? Where have I succeeded? Where have I failed? Where are my resources? What do I have at my fingertips? Does it all come together and point to one thing? And can I do that one thing? Is that within my grasp? And when you come to that place of convergence, you realize, oh, it's all pointing right here to do this. And if you can do this, then you will have done what you were called, destined, created, designed for. And that's my goal on this earth. I mean, of course, I want to be a great father, a great husband. I want to be a great friend and all those things. I think we would all agree on that. But I also want to see that place of convergence in my life where my skills and experience and resources are all put together, and I do that one thing that I was meant to. I was, one out of 8 billion people on the planet. If we were all doing that one thing that we were destined for, man, what amazing planet we would have. And so that's how I define success.
That's phenomenal. Wow. So eloquently put. I've never, again, true to form, no two have answered it the same, and that includes with you. But convergence, what a great topic. I can imagine an entire book being written about that. I wonder if there's anybody on this show that would actually be interested in doing something like that, taking out a book. I know you're writing another one. I'm actually in the process of completing my first. That is a great topic. Yeah,
there's a guy named, if anybody's interested, there's a guy named Dr. Lance Wallnau, Lance, Wallnau. I think it's Wallnau, and he teaches on this thing of convergence, and it's really powerful stuff.
Excellent. I am definitely going to look that up. And I also heard from a little birdie that there was something that you had for our listeners and our viewers, a little gift. And if you don't mind, I will just turn it over to you to take that away, and I'll bring up your website on the screen so you can guide everyone through that.
Okay. Well, I have been investing in apartments for years, but I found something more powerful in the form of investing in self-storage and mobile home parks. And even though I called my book The Perfect Investment, and that's a book about apartment investing, I actually think at this moment in the cycle, there's a lot more money and a lot more wealth to be created through investing in mobile home parks and self-storage. So I'm going to offer a free special report to anyone who wants to visit my website. It's Wellings Capital, that's Wellings, capital.com/resources. And if you go there, you can sign up to get a free copy of this self-storage report and this mobile home park investing report. There you go. You only have to give us your first name and email, and we'll get that right out to you.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much on behalf of everyone that is watching and listening for that. That's going to be amazing. I'm going to do just the same and get those wonderful reports. Well, Paul, I want to tell you, my brother, it has been an amazing, wonderful ride with you tonight. I appreciate you beyond words. Is there a what is the best way for folks to get in touch with you? Is it your website? Would you rather they go to Facebook, email, a phone number? How would you like to reach out?
I think going to our website and filling out a contact form would be the best way. And again, that's wellingscapital.com.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thanks so much for handling all that stuff that I normally do, which is spell things out and be very clear. This is a pro. You can tell. I love it. Paul, I wanted to say once again, thank you so very much for coming on, spending this hour with me and with everyone who's been watching. And for those of you that are watching live and those of you that are watching at the recording later and listening on podcasts, we appreciate you for your time. We look forward to seeing you all again on the next episode of the Mind Body Business Show. For now, on behalf of Mr. Paul Moore, this is Brian Kelly saying good night, and we'll see you again next week. Be blessed, everyone.
Thank you for watching and listening. This has been the Mind Body Business Show. with Brian Kelly.